Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's National Geographic Explorer Classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski. I will be your host for today. For those who are just tuning in for the first time in the last couple of weeks, we've been celebrating Big Cats. So Big Cat Week is an extension of the Big Cats Initiative, which supports scientists and conservationists working to save big cats in the wild. And we're really excited for today's hangout with Paola Bouley. She's the co-founder and associate director of lion conservation in Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique. She's a conservation ecologist and grantee with the Big Cats initiative. And she's working to secure the post-war recovery of Gorongosa's lion, leopard, and hyena populations. So she leads a team of boots-on-the-ground conservationists in the first formal big cat conservation research program in the park since it was founded. And it's pretty exciting today. As you can see, Paula's out in the field. We're using one of our satellite BGAN units to broadcast via satellite where it was not possible before. So Paula, it's so great to have you joining us from Mozambique today.
Thank you, Joe, and hello to everyone, wherever you are in the world. It's so good to see you, and thanks for having me.
All right. Well, of course, we want to have you for Big Cats Week. We'd love to hear a little bit about the park, Gorongosa National Park.
Okay, so I'm basically standing in the middle of the park right now. I drove about an hour to get here through some rain and mud. And Gorongosa National Park is in the center of Mozambique, which is a country in southern Africa. Not a lot of people know where it is, but it's worth looking up on a map. It's a beautiful country. And back in the 1970s, before most of you were born, definitely before you were born, even before I was born, this country had became independent from Portugal. And shortly thereafter, a war broke out in the country that lasted almost 20 years. And Gorongosa National Park was the center of where that war raged for 16 years. So before the war, there were estimated to be a couple of hundred lions, tens of thousands of buffalo, zebra, a whole lot of animals, a very, very rich place. And but after the war, very little was left. Because obviously during a war, people are hungry, people are shooting animals to raise money. There's a whole lot of really not so good happening. But we're now more than 20 years later since the end of the war, which ended in 1992. We're in the middle of one of probably planet Earth's most ambitious, exciting restoration projects. We're working to restore a whole ecosystem here. And my focus is on the lions. Lions are so important to parks in Africa because, as you know, people come from all over the world to see these animals, but they're also very ecologically important. So we started here 5 years ago, and there was zero known about this population. We knew nothing. So myself and my team, no one does this alone. We got going, and we started really doing some basic ecology, counting how many lions, where they are, what they eat, who they're hanging out with, if they're having babies, if they're dying, everything about this population that we could gather. And 5 years down the line, I can honestly say that we've finally been able to actually push a recovery of lion system, largely thanks to the work of the Big Cat Initiative. And I can tell you a little bit more about exactly what we did to help the recovery happen here. But in a nutshell, Gorongosa National Park and our lion story. So, Joe.
Yeah. All right. Well, definitely we want to hear some more details about how you've been working to rebound the populations. But before that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in Gorongosa National Park?
It was a long journey. I think my journey started when I was 10 years old, I can say. At the time, I had to give a talk in class about a project that I wanted to do, and I chose conservation of cheetahs. I was born and I grew up in South Africa, and even back in those days when I was 10 years old, cheetah were really threatened and a very rare and now actually an endangered species. And I wanted to save cheetah. And through the years, I pursued an education. I actually traveled to the US to do my undergraduate and graduate degrees in ecology, and I worked in restoration, mostly on the west coast of the United States. And then I came back to my home ground, at first to Zambia, where I worked on carnivores in another national park. And then I heard about Gorongosa National Park. And when I heard about the park, one of the first things I learned was that no one was studying lions in this park, even though they're so important. So I pretty much got on a plane and came right on over and started a project and built a team. I'm the only person that's not from Mozambique on our team, and we began what is now a very long-term project. I think 20 years from now, I won't be standing here obviously telling that story, but there'll be new generations telling the grand story.
That's awesome. It's so important to involve, um, local people in these kind of projects. Um, I imagine it gives them a tremendous sense of pride to be involved in protecting their wildlife.
Yeah, and just like for ourselves in our own backyards, our own communities, we usually know more about that place than anyone else. So it's local communities have the knowledge, they have the capacity, they have the means, and so it's vitally important that these efforts are driven by local communities. Yes.
Yeah. So, you heard about the park, you decided to come and start this study. And so what have you been doing? How are lions doing in the park? And how has the project you started been a part of that?
Okay, so like I mentioned, we knew nothing about lions here. And so when I got going, what we began doing was setting up camera traps. I'm sure most of the students have heard of these little cameras that you can put out in your backyard, in parks, to actually remotely monitor what's there. And we began to look for lions and leopards and hyena using these camera traps. The second most important thing we did is put these collars on lions. So just like I'm connecting to you with this BGen unit right now, we have these collars that we put on lions that have units that connect with satellites every few hours. So in real time, I know exactly where all our lion groups are in the park and if they're moving well, if they're eating, if they're mating. So the technology between the camera traps and the satellite collars that ping, literally through space every few hours, we've really managed to put a population that there was nothing known about on the map. So technology was a big part of that. And the other thing was really being present full time. Sometimes when you embark on something this big, it's very difficult to learn something in 1 month or 2 months or 3 months and to come and go every few weeks. You really have to put your roots down. You have to build a team. You have to be out here every day, come rain, sun, whatever it might be. So I think those are the three crucial elements, like pairing technology with the local team so we can really have a good presence here to figure out what was going on. And what we learned was that, our lions are fat. They have a lot of cubs. Their cubs survive. So the question was, well, what is holding them back from really recovering? Because they weren't recovering very well. We weren't seeing a lot of lions, yet we were seeing a lot of other species. If you come to Gorongosa National Park, there's a lot of lion food out here. The herbivores, the prey that lions consume are abundant. There's no shortage of food. So the question was, what is holding lions back? And by doing the intensive monitoring, by using the GPS collar data, by being in the field every day, what we learned was that the single most limiting factor for our lions was something that we call the bushmeat trade. So in these very, very poor areas in Africa, and actually across the world, it's not just restricted to Africa, people still utilize traditional hunting methods. And so they're out there trying to catch protein, to put food on the table, to raise money in the markets. And they're trying to catch the same things that lions eat: warthog and buffalo and zebra and all these species. But guess what? Lions are caught in the same traps that are being set for these other animals. So even though people weren't targeting them, hunting for them, they were being hit just as badly as these other species, if not worse, because they were such a small population. So this, I might have gone into a lot of detail there, but basically, out here, the way traditional hunting is done is you set these wire traps, or you use what we call steel jaw traps, which are actually legal in Canada and used by hunters. And they catch these herbivores in them, and then the meat is taken to market. But unfortunately, lions are also taken, not to market necessarily, but they either become three-legged or they starve to death in these traps. And that was the thing that we found was holding our lions back. And that's where we jumped in, specifically with National Geographic and the Big Cat Initiative. And we went from being researchers to veterinarians. So we were rescuing lions. We were literally going out there, taking these traps off their feet, off their necks. We were treating them, medicating, doing everything we could to rehabilitate an animal that was hit. But then we took it a whole step further. And we started working with what we in Africa here call scouts or rangers. They're basically like our national park rangers. They go out, they're in uniform, and they basically walk all over this park. And they look for these snares, these wire snares, and these steel jaw traps, and they take them out of the field and destroy them. So even before a lion is able to step in and get injured, they're just not there anymore. And yeah, so 2 years ago, we were losing about 16 lions. 16 lions were being hit. We'd have to rescue them. Some we couldn't save. But in just the past year, we've only had one. So, so we've had some major success over the past year with our new strategy, a new way of doing things to keep lions alive. And I can happily report that in the past year, I've never seen so many cubs being born.
Excuse me. Stop talking. Sit down.
There's lions. Every lioness that we monitor has got cubs. They're healthy. They're being raised, and our lions are a lot more secure. So I finally feel like we've gone from having a population that was teetering on the brink of extinction to now taking off and recovering.
That's great news, Paula. It's always great to hear projects, some good news in conservation, because the news isn't always good. I have a question for you about a typical day, because I'm not sure if you do have a typical day. There was, we were trying to do a test call about a week ago, and you had to cancel because there was a hyena that you had to track down and catch in one of the villages. So is there such thing as a typical day for you?
No, the typical day is be any. We're like a response team. Today we wake up, we're getting messages, we're getting emails, getting calls from scouts in the field,
Slow.
and we have to. So as mentioned, about a week ago, we got a call from a local community who reported lions taking boats.
So I tried to download it. It was taking forever.
Community. And we immediately responded, thinking we have to basically catch some lions and move them to parks. But we didn't find hyena. And the first brown hyena, the very rare.
Okay, guys, you need to be quiet in
first
order
brown
to hear.
Gorongosa, not the real. So we put a previously undocumented large mammal on the map, and we had to spend about a week living in the community trying to catch the hyena, which we did a few days ago successfully, and put a collar on him, and he's now roaming through the park looking for mates. So, but today is just be ready for anything.
Fair enough. So, Paul, I have a request from one of the classrooms. Are you able to lift up the phone and kind of give us a 360 view of where you are?
I can. Okay. I'm going to move you a little. All right. So what I'm doing is standing, let me see, and what we call a flood.
Is that rain behind you? It looks like some heavy rain coming from those clouds.
It's heavy rain. In this direction, right behind here, is what we call the mountain is our watershed. And a lot of the rain that falls over and falls onto that mountain eventually makes the floodplain. And this flood will be full of water and crocodile, hippopotamus. But essentially, we're looking at a bed that will eventually water because of what the mountain behind me here. So,
Okay, guys, I know it's really hard to hear, but you have to be quiet, okay?
So, Paula, are you still able to hear us okay? You're starting to break up a little voice-wise.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, well, let's see what
Can you
happens.
hear me?
I can, but every once in a while we kind of lose your voice a little bit, and it might just be the clouds playing games with us.
Yeah, there is a storm coming north, so that's what satellites. Yeah.
All right. Well, because we do have a storm approaching, maybe we should meet some classrooms now and get some of their questions before you get rained on.
Yeah.
All right. So just a quick shout out to any classrooms who are watching on YouTube. Use the chat sidebar. Let us know who you are and where you're watching from. Send in a question if you like. And just a quick shout out to Mrs. Young's class in Emerson, Manitoba. I know they're watching live today. So let's meet our first live classroom on camera. So Mrs. Akel's class are joining us from San Antonio in Texas. They're a grade 5 classroom. And your microphone is on.
So Joe,
Yes, Paula.
just so you know, people approaching, so I'll just have to.
Sorry, Paula, what's happening?
There's a vehicle that's
Turning up all the way. It is.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Paula's just ducking out. There's a vehicle approaching. It may be some of her rangers, so she just needs to duck out for just 2 minutes to talk to them. While she's doing that,
There we go.
I'll just
Okay,
very quickly say we have classrooms joining us from Texas, Salem, Illinois.
all right.
Try your best to listen.
Oh, you're back?
I'm back. Sorry.
That's okay. Did you know the people in the truck?
Okay, you need to be quiet.
Yeah, you know, so basically,
Quiet means not talking at all. So go to your desk if you need to.
I'm sitting on one of the main roads, so I just had to let you know what we were doing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we introduced Mrs. Akel's class joining us from San Antonio, Texas, grade 5s. And I bet you they have a question for you.
Hi.
What time is it over there, and how many hurt animals have you found?
Okay, the time right now. What time is it for you there? What's the time?
9:20 a.m.
9:20 a.m.
9:20 a.m. Right here, it's 5:20 p.m. in the afternoon. So I'm basically, what, 10 hours ahead?
I think we're 7 hours
No,
right
not
now.
10. You're 8 hours behind me. Sorry. In Texas.
That sounds right. Yep.
I'm traveling. Yeah, exactly. I'm traveling on the other side of the planet. So we're getting into sunset now. In terms of animals we've counted, we've put over 100 lions on the map here. And in a given year, we very closely monitor about 70 of those. We can't cover the whole park. The park is so big that we focus on a core area, which is about 1,200 square. Oh, it's about a third of the total park.
All right, great question. We're going to meet a new classroom now, Mrs. Metcalf's class. They're grade 6s joining us in Salem, Illinois. Let me turn your microphone on.
How do you identify each lion?
I love that question. That's such a good question. So, you know how us humans, you can tell a human from a fingerprint? Like every human has a different fingerprint. Well, lions have a very similar thing, and it's their whisker spots. So, you know, if you look at a cat's whisker spots, where the whiskers come out, and you'll see dark little. Well, every cat has a different pattern of those whisker spots, and we call that the lion basic fingerprint. And that's how we tell each cat apart. We photograph them, we draw them, and every lion has a different pattern, which is just really lucky for us. But next time, if you've got cats at home, check it out. You'll see the same thing. It's pretty cool.
All right, that is really cool. And a great question from our class in Salem. Sliding down, we are going to London, Ontario, grade 4-5s with Mrs. Hurley's class. Let me turn your mic on. How you guys doing over there?
We're great, thanks. Right.
How long have you worked with the lions?
Say again?
Did you hear our question? How long have you been working with lions?
I didn't hear it.
How long
I've been working with lions for 7 years. For 7 years.
7 years.
All right, and is that about when you first arrived in the park, 7 years?
I first returned from the United States to the African continent, and I first worked in Zambia. And, you know, I think it's important for people to realize you don't have to start off studying lions and university to land up studying lions or doing conservation of lions in the wild. I studied barnacles, I studied copepods, I studied wild salmon, I worked on native plants, native birds. As an ecologist, the principles are pretty much the same. And it's just really more about being passionate about what you work on and be willing to work really hard and learn a lot quickly. So, you know, you can start any.
All right, thank you for that question from London, Ontario, about an hour from me, so not too far. Mrs. Frawley's class is joining us from Sarnia, Ontario, grade 5-6 classroom. Let me turn your microphone on. How are we doing, grade 5-6s?
Good.
Okay, so I hear you guys were enjoying a Christmas concert. Did you perform already?
Yeah. We're the first one.
What song did you do?
Carol the Bells with glow sticks. Yep.
Wow, sounds cool. You guys have a question for Paula?
Yes. What's the coolest thing that you've seen with lions?
The coolest thing I've seen with lions, I have to say it's the babies. That's just me. There's nothing that like brings me more joy than to see those little cubs that are just born. They're so tiny and they seem so fragile, but they're actually really, really tough. And just to see the bonds between the mothers and the cubs, it's very, very special, and it is the coolest thing by far.
All right. Awesome. And you said that there's pretty much every lioness has cubs right now?
Yeah, every lioness we're monitoring has at least 1 to 4 cubs. So this year has been so, so good for the lions. And I really have a lot of hope for them now. And because lions are doing so well, we'll be able to now talk about bringing leopards back here and spotted hyena, all these other large carnivores, large wild dogs even. So the lions are really like paving the way for a lot more to happen here.
That's incredible, bringing the whole ecosystem back. And as many classrooms probably know, that keystone predators are so important. The top predators are so important in the ecosystem.
Ty, behave yourself.
All right.
Stop.
Whoops, there we go. Let's meet another classroom. We have Mrs. Zamora's class, 5th grade, joining us in San Antonio, Texas. And let me turn your microphone on.
Oh.
Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
We're doing really well. We've got David here and he has a question for you.
Hi, David.
What is the most dangerous thing that has happened to you?
Speak up. Speak up, baby.
What is the most dangerous thing that has happened to you?
You know, it's all about perspective. I think realistically, the most dangerous thing I've encountered here is a mosquito because there's malaria. And malaria is something that it's basically you get really sick from being bitten by a mosquito, and it can threaten your life. So I'm worried more about mosquitoes than I am about lions, that's for sure. And then the other sort of tricky thing sometimes is working around elephants. Elephants are very wild. They're very big. They can be challenging. So I've had a few close encounters that have sort of made me shaky. But, you know, you just got to be always vigilant in the field. I'm standing here in the wilderness and, you know, I should be checking around myself very constantly. At any moment, a herd of elephants could come over the grass there. But, you know, what you do in these situations is you use all your senses. You know, it's not just the eyes, it's also your sense of smell and listening. So you develop a lot of these places that are a little more dangerous.
All right, another great question. And I bet that answer surprised a lot of students, but you do hear that a lot, is mosquitoes are actually by far the most dangerous creatures around. They do carry a lot of disease. Mrs. Brady's class is joining us from Festus, Missouri, grade 6 classroom. And I believe that's our last live classroom that we haven't visited yet.
Oh, really loud. Have you ever? Oh, hi. Have you ever interacted with any of the animals? You might repeat yourself.
Interact? You mean actually touch them, or?
Well, just like
what
be
do you
up
mean
close, like.
Yeah. So to do some of the work that we've done, like, so imagine if you have to put a collar on a lion, or you have to put them to sleep so you can take a wire snare off their foot. We have to basically sedate them, and we do that with a tranquilizer dart gun that deploys a medication that basically puts them to sleep for about an hour. And during that time, we're able to handle them. So we can take out samples and measurements, we can take off snares, we can put on collars. So during those times, we've had very hands-on, you know, interactions with the animals. But it's not for fun. It's definitely to do our work. Yeah. But it is fun. If I could go back in time and maybe pick an alternate career track, I would have been a wildlife veterinarian. Even though I do all the work now, it's just got to be one of the coolest careers ever.
All right. We have a question coming in on YouTube from the classroom in Manitoba who's watching along. And they're wondering about the average weight for a female lion and a male lion.
Girls, stop and listen, please. Just sit still.
Wow. I'm going to have a hard time with that in pounds. Somebody can help me convert that. So, you know, a male lion can be about 200 to 220 kilograms. I don't know if Canada uses metric or, and a female can be up to 150 to 180 kilograms. So they're significantly smaller than males, but it's still a very big animal. Yeah.
So I did the quick conversion.
I mean,
because we use pounds up in Canada. So 220 kilograms is about 485 pounds. So that's pretty big, male lion.
Marcus, I don't know why you're
we do
right now. Come sit down.
Say again? Oh, okay. So just to consider, like, I'm a pretty fit, strong person. And when I'm working with a male lion who's sleeping next to me and we're trying to put a collar on, I can barely pick up his head. It's so heavy. It takes two people to just lift his head. So they're gigantic animals.
All right. Well, we've met all our classrooms and we still have some time. Are you still okay time-wise, Paula? Or do you need to get going?
No, I'm good. As long as you have questions, I'm here.
All right. So what we'll do is any classrooms, I can see you all on camera at the bottom of the screen. Give me a wave if you have another question, and I'll jump back to your classrooms. I see Mrs. Metcalf giving a wave, so let me turn on their microphone.
Hi, we have two quick questions. One of the questions, we've been following WildCam labs, and we're wondering, why do we see so many water buck? And then also Becca.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you brought that up. WildCam Gorongosa, yeah. And it's so exciting to meet a WildCam room. WildCam was really one of the first tools we ever used to try to figure out what was going on with lions. And you observed correctly, there's a lot of water buck in this park. In fact, we have, there's about 50,000 of them. And every year they just grow. They're growing exponentially. There's no limit on their growth. And one of the reasons is because we have so few large carnivores in the park, or had. So this is a very classic case of a release of predation pressure, of, a large carnivore not being there to keep a population regulated. And on most days, you can stand out here on the floodplain and all you see is water buck, water buck, water buck. Now, the other cool thing is, you'd think, when you watch National Geographic and you see lions hunting, you often see them running and chasing down prey, and it's very dramatic. But in Gorongosa, I've never seen a lion kill an animal out on the open floodplain. They're always in the thick grass and the forests. But guess what? All our water buck, most of them are out on the open flood. So they're not predated on by lions because they're just not overlapping with their habitat. The lions can much easier pick off a warthog, which is one of our native pigs, or a water buck in the tall grass. Because in the tall grass, guess what? They just don't see the lion there even. But the lion can very easily just reach out and take it. So it's about energy expenditure, It's much easier to take a water buck in the grass and have to chase him down for a kilometer in the open. So that's a great question. Yeah. And I have a challenge for the WildCam Gorongosa team. So very, very soon, you're going to be picking up a new carnivore on WildCam. And that'll be the leopard, which I'm sure you haven't seen yet. But for the first time, we found habitats where we have native leopards. And I should put out a challenge to see who spots the leopard first, because there must be a special prize for that one. we'll do that.
It's a trip to Gorongosa.
Say again?
Could the prize be a
You're
trip?
going to come to Gorongosa? Uh-huh. That would be great.
How does it feel when you track down a lion and put the tracking collar on the lion?
You know, in the beginning, I have to say it was a little bit scary. You know, as a wildlife veterinarian, when you are like sedating an animal, handling an animal, the most important thing is the health and safety of that animal. Of course, you don't want to negatively affect them in any way. You're trying to help them, not harm them, and also the safety of your team. So during these operations, you're always very, very focused. It can be stressful times because you're working around elephants or in very long grass or really far away from a lot of things. So, you know, but after 5 years, your team gets very, very good at doing these things and very efficient, and we work together. And it's always exciting, but it's always there's always this level of just making sure everything goes really well because it's stress. It can be stressful, but you learn to manage that. And part of that is to have a good team working together. Did that answer?
Yes, thank you very much.
Lovely.
Hey, Paula. Can you hear me
Hi.
okay?
I hear
Sorry,
you.
guys, I dropped out. You all the way in Gorongosa
Oh,
with a satellite unit, and we lose internet here in Ontario, Canada. So it looks like you talked to a few classrooms while I was gone. Are there any classrooms who still have questions who didn't get a chance? Oh, I see waving like crazy in Missouri. So Mrs. Brady's class, your microphone's on.
There you go.
Hi.
Have you ever almost gotten attacked by an animal?
Yes. The case was elephants. So elephants can be very, very dangerous. And so you have to be always very, very vigilant around elephant herds. You have to remember, elephants are very intelligent animals, and some of the females that were here during the war, when there was a lot of shooting and all of that stuff, even though it was decades ago, many, many years ago, they still remember, and they don't quite associate people with good things, which is fine. Animals should be totally wild, but sometimes when you're around them, it can get a little tense. And I've been charged a few times, and it definitely puts you it's interesting. Sure.
Yes, I can imagine a big bull elephant bearing down on you would be pretty intimidating.
Actually,
Any
it's
elephant.
not bulls. It's most the females with young because they're so protective of their babies. So it's understandable, totally. Yeah.
All right. So if you haven't had a chance for a second question, wave at the camera. I'll make sure I get you guys. Okay, Mrs. Zamora's class, your microphone's on.
I was wondering, have you ever seen any black maned lions?
Any black maned
Have
lion?
I what?
Have you ever seen?
No. Yeah, I have seen them from other parks, and we have male lions here that have some very dark like rims on their mane, but never fully black. And people often ask, what causes one mane to be different from another? There's all kinds of things, habitat, but also it's just like us. You know, my hair was brown and yours would be blonde, that kind of thing. But in Gorongosa National Park, we don't have like black maned lions.
All right, let's see who's still up there. There we go, Mrs. Hurley's group. Your microphone is on again.
Maybe tap it. Yeah.
I think you might have to turn it on for me. I don't hear you guys.
Yeah, I'm not hearing either.
Okay, how do I get us back to them?
Okay. Can I ask my question?
Yeah, if we get picked.
Microphone icon at the top. It should be changed from red to white if you click on it.
Is it us? It's us. I'm not
Did it say us? Oh, where do I?
There we go.
Uh-huh.
Hey,
Alright.
what? That's a different class.
When a lion gets hurt. Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, I have. And then he was like, "Oh."
Can you repeat?
I have a question.
Say it loud.
What do you do when a lion gets hurt?
When a lion gets hurt? So our team will go out and
Just a
assess
couple
the
more minutes.
situation, figure out why the lion is hurt, and then we'll make a plan. So we'll decide what we need to do. You know, you got to remember, lions every now and again they're like cats. You know,
Twice.
fights or kill a warthog, one of our pig
Hi.
species here, and they'll get
Hi.
injured by a horse. And most of the injuries they heal just fine. You don't have to. Lions are incredibly tough and they heal so fast. But if it's that perhaps has been as a result of a human activity, like the snaring or the steel jaw traps that are left out by hunters, then we will intervene. And the first thing we'll do is sedate the animal. So you use a dart gun, you administer the medications, they go to sleep, and then the veterinarians get to work treating with antibiotics, washing, and all that good stuff. And then we wake up the animal, and usually after one treatment, they're fine and good to go. But we'll keep monitoring just to make sure.
All right, and I think we have 2 more classrooms to visit, Mrs. Akel's class and Mrs. Frawley. So let's go to Mrs. Akel's class in Texas first. Your microphone's on.
Can you show us the scenery and tell us a little bit more about it?
Can you say that again?
Can you show us the scenery and tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I can. I don't know how to turn the screen around. Ah, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna show you what I'm looking at. I'm gonna turn the screen around. And, yeah. So the sun is going down. This is the way I'm looking at. But you see, it's very open. And then the mountain is behind the
Zambia and Africa.
storm cloud. This is the forest edge where the lions like to hang around. This is my vehicle. This is the satellite unit that's beaming me up to you. But yeah, this big floodplain here that you see in front, that's going to be filled with water in 2 to 3 months. And literally I'll stand here and I'll see hippos just breaching out of the water, and there'll be giant crocodiles on the edge of the water. So it's a very, very cool place. But in the dry season, which we're coming to the end of now, this is where you'll see waterbuck. And you'll see orbeez, and you'll see reedbuck and warthog and all the various species that we have in this park. So see some.
You want to get your lunch can if you lunch box can, but still please.
All right, that's perfect. That's awesome. It's such wide open space. It's really neat to see those clouds and the storm clouds as well, and the rain coming down in different spots. That's really cool. And let's go for a final question back to London, Ontario. Your mic should be on, guys.
Is it us?
Oh, sorry, Sarnia. Yep, it's you guys.
What's the most unique animal you've bumped into or spotted?
The most unique, you know, the hyena that we just rescued from the community. That is the most unique because so rare to see a brown hyena in the first place, and we've never ever seen them around this park before. So you can imagine our surprise. It's a rare species, and managed to rescue it and back into this wilderness to live out its life. So that was a very unique sighting.
All right. Well, Paula, thank you so much. This has been such a neat experience to have the unit out there with you in the park, to see the landscape and kind of the sunset on one side, the storm clouds. It's really, really amazing. And the work you're doing is really incredible. So thank you for what you're doing to protect big cats. And yeah, I look forward, and I'm sure the classrooms do as well, to following the work more. And if you want to send me a link to those cams you were talking about, it would be neat to send that to the students and then they can check it out.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. So nice to meet you. And you know, Joe will tell you where to reach me if you have any other questions. You're always free to reach out.
All right. And I have one more little request from you. After you shut the unit down, can you take a couple pictures just of the scenery and with the unit in the background and such, just so we have those for the site? That would be awesome. And then I'm going to turn the microphones on and give the classrooms a chance to say goodbye and thank you. And so it's going to get loud over there. All right, boys and girls, microphones are coming on nice and loud. Goodbye and thank you to... All right, a great job as always. Once again, Paula, thank you so much. That was a ton of fun. And yeah, good luck with the next few weeks. And we hope to do more from Gorongosa coming up.
I would love to do this.